When you're teaching English conversation classes, there's one thing you need to get right from the very beginning. It isn't conversation topics, it isn't how to correct, and it isn't boffing up on pronunciation techniques. It's the social environment. I'm Will from Enchanted ESL, and this is the first video in a series aimed at helping you become an excellent practitioner in teaching English conversation classes. The focus in this first installment is the single most important factor underpinning success of those classes. In fact, getting the social environment correct in any class, no matter the subject, is really important, but it's even more relevant in a class based on communication. So I'll go over what you need to get right and how to do it. So what do I mean by social environment? Well, really, it's just how students feel being around the other members of the class. Often these conversation classes are one-to-one, so it's just how they feel around you, the teacher. Sometimes they're done in groups though, so there's social dynamics between individual students. People are complex. We have all sorts of irrational emotions and things about interacting with other people, and that can play havoc with learning. The best learning takes place in what is called the proximal zone of development. This basically means the area just beyond what you can already do. Going into this zone comes with a serious risk of failure. Mistakes are inevitable. And that's good. That's a major part of learning. If your students could do everything you needed them to do without making a mistake, then what are they actually learning? What's the point in them going to the class? You wouldn't expect a musician to learn a song straight away and never mess up. They have to practice and go through those mistakes. But music is often practiced in private and only performed when it's perfect. But conversation is a constant performance in front of other people. So students will make lots of mistakes that other people will see. In a good social environment, everyone is okay with that. And if you're super lucky, your students will start with that attitude. They won't mind making mistakes no matter who witnesses them. Realistically though, they'll be pretty nervous and reluctant to take risks. To begin with, your job is to create an atmosphere in which everybody feels comfortable making mistakes. So what is it exactly we need to do? What are the attitudes and feelings we need to foster in our classes? The first thing is to remove good old-fashioned social nervousness. As a tutor, it's pretty scary to meet your students for the first time, but you can bet that your students are feeling just as nervous, if not more. So right from the start, you need to take the lead and get everybody comfortable in each other's presence. The way to do this is simple. Smile, be warm and cheerful, make an appropriate amount of eye contact, and greet them in a culturally acceptable way that's not too formal and not too casual. If you're energetic and positive, your students will follow suit. And if you're teaching a group, do some icebreaker activities to get students to learn about each other. And as you spend more time with your students, maintain this friendly, professional attitude. That's fairly obvious stuff and applies to any social interaction. So let's focus on some English-specific things. Something that blocks a lot of students from speaking is the fear of mockery and ridicule. I don't like setting a lot of rules in my classes, but one of them is to never laugh at anyone if they make a mistake. You should follow that rule, and all students should follow that rule. Stepping into that proximal zone of development puts a student in a very vulnerable position. If there's a chance of getting mocked for messing up there, then they just won't do it. This is particularly prevalent with teenagers. The consequences of messing up and looking foolish in front of your peers is a really intense fear. Quite a lot of adults feel the same too. If you remove these consequences by eliminating the chances of them getting laughed at, then they'll be much more likely to step into that proximal zone of development. It's not just mockery either. If a student feels their mistakes will make you frustrated or disappointed that they just can't get it right, then they will retreat into their shells. Negative criticism is hard to take in any form. I know I hate to be told I'm wrong, even if it's done in a nice way. Of course, you do have to correct students sometimes, but if you do so with anger or frustration or those kind of emotions attached, it will seriously dent their confidence. Positive feedback and emotions is a great alternative. Sometimes it's too easy to focus only on what's wrong and not celebrate what is right. Creating a good social environment involves making students feel good when they take risks, even if they do mess up. Successful or not, it should be applauded. Correction technique is a huge part of conversation classes, and it warrants its own video. That will come later in the series, and when I've made it, it will be up there and down in the description. If you're finding this video useful, please hit the like button. It really helps this channel grow. Thanks. The next thing you want students to feel is that they have time to express themselves and that people will pay attention to what they say. Listening to a student struggle through a sentence is difficult sometimes. It's tempting to step in and give them the words, just get them to the end. And other students might want to do the same, thinking they're helping them out. Refrain from doing this. That agonizing process is part of learning. It's developing fluency. Next time they come to say that sentence or something similar, they'll do it faster with more confidence. If you just complete the sentence for them, then they haven't improved. In a conversation, it's easy to rush. You want to exchange all of these fantastic ideas, and the language becomes secondary. Plus, you want to add your own ideas and perspectives. But beware of doing this because it can cost your students rhythm and development. Remember, you're fluent. You already have the language. It's very easy for you to express yourselves while your student has to put in a lot of effort. If you take over and dominate the conversation, students will either back off and just let you talk, or they'll get really frustrated that they never get to elaborate their ideas. In these classes, it doesn't really matter what they say. Their ideas and opinions are secondary to them learning the language, and even if you disagree with them, it doesn't matter. Yes, it's good to get them to explain their reasoning and challenge them to develop their ideas further, but it's not about shooting down their opinions. If they feel they aren't free to express their thoughts because you'll take over with your superior language skills, they'll be reluctant to speak. The same is true if you're teaching a group. People have different perspectives. If there's conflict affecting the social dynamic, remind students that they're there to learn English, not to have an argument over some issues. On the other hand, if they are mature enough to engage in a healthy discussion, then definitely do that. And of course, there's a limit to what people should talk about. If students go beyond the boundaries of decency, definitely stop them. Essentially, we're dealing with a lot of people skills. And at its heart, that's what teaching is all about. Here's how I think about English speaking classes. Imagine you're doing a class with native fluent English speakers, but all of the students have to sing everything. Singing is a form of communication just like speaking in another language. If you were teaching students how to sing, how would you create a safe and supportive environment for them? Well, you might find yourself doing a lot of things we've covered in this video. Okay, so now we've created a good atmosphere for learning. What should we talk about? What topics are best with your class? Well, you can find out about that in the next video in this series, which will be right here. But for now, I've been Will from Enchanted ESL, wishing you all the joy and success in your teaching. See ya!